I just saw this um, Instagram of someone. It's an advertisement saying how it's an advertisement like promoting this like a real estate thing, right? It doesn't matter. But they were saying the opening line of that advertisement was, at such a young age of under 30 years old, she is about to get her first home. At such a young age of below 30 years old. 30 years old. She's about to get her first home. Ridiculous. I find that absolutely ridiculous, right? The reason being that you should not. Wait, look, let me put this into perspective, right? Let's say you live to 90 years old. You took one third of your life to settle down to get a house? That's ridiculous. That is bullshit. All right. You know why? You know, having a place to stay is is like essential. It's essential. It's your home base, right? Whenever you start a game, whenever you start like whenever you start a game like in a video game, whenever you start doing anything actually, you have a home base, right? You have a place where you start out in and you can return to. Now the common consensus, the common thing to do is to rent. I find that absolutely ridiculous, right? And I know it's not people's choice to not own a house. I know that if you had a choice, you would definitely go buy a house, right? But the common thing today is to rent. It really it's living in someone else's house. It's not a stable thing, right? It's not stable. I mean, yes, you can have a contract that says I'm gonna live here for how many years, but it's not a forever thing. Of course, you don't need it to be a forever thing. A lot of people don't need it to be a forever thing, and in fact, a lot of people don't even need a house to begin with. But to me, I believe that having a house is an essential part of someone's life, and it should not be 30 years old. It should not be under. It should be if you're if your um uh if your definition of I'm a bit tired, but if your definition is under 30 is like 25, that's still kind of okay. That's like reaching the limit of what I would say is acceptable to get a house, to get like a stable place to live, right? I mean, yes, you don't need a house. You don't need to own a house to get a stable place to live. You can rent, yeah. But to get a house, to have like this sense of security, I feel like 25 is kind of the max, right? 30 is like you're kind of pushing it. You're kind of pushing it already, right? And I know that if people had the choice to buy a house, they definitely would. Hell, in the past, a house used to cost less than a car. Can you believe that nowadays a house is something that you have to pay off over 30, 40 years? That is ridiculous, right? And it really shows how out of hand this market has gotten. People have to save up for like 30 years just to afford a down payment for a house, and they're gonna be paying off that house for the rest of their lives. And in Singapore as well, especially in this country, you're having you can't even buy a house, and if you can't even buy a house by yourself until you're 35, or you need to get married, right? Because the government needs because to afford public housing. Can you believe that? Public housing, right? Because the government needs some way to know that you're stable, that you have that you're grounded, right? And marriage is one way, and also being old and having a job is another way, right? And I just find that a real unfortunate situation. It's a I feel it's a really unfortunate situation that people have to dedicate such a large part of their lives just to get such a significant and large part of their lives just to get a place to live, a place to to stay. It's it's baffling to think about, right? Like usually when you start off in a game, or when you start off doing something, you have a place that you go, that you could come back to like, that you call home, right? That you call home. But in real life, that prospect isn't real. That in real life, that prospect is in real life, the actual situation is, you have to rent. That's the most common thing. You have to rent. Either you rent or you live with your parents, and that's fine. But when you're doing that at 30 years old, it kind of seems a bit, uh it kind of, it's a bit sad in a way. And it's sad, as in, like, it's sad that the housing market is like this. Not it's I mean, that it forces people to not have a house, to it's a bit sad in that sense. Not really in the I mean, unless you don't work hard at all, and then you're just a bum living in someone's house, you know then it's a bit sad that your life is a bit sad. But if a normal person, a normal person can't afford a house, that's a bit sad. You look at the housing prices these days, fucking insane. Even public housing in Singapore is like, wow, I'm gonna have to save up a lot just to afford the down payment, right? If you're like 20 years old in Singapore, the usual thing is that you're 20 years old and you just got out of 20 something years old and you just got out of university, right? You haven't even made a single cent yet. I mean, you could technically get a part-time job. Yeah, you could have made like, like, I don't know, 10-20K, around there maybe. And then and then and then and then you still have NS, right? So you maybe have like 30-40K. That's nothing compared to even the down payment on a house. I just think that I just find this entire situation really ridiculous. And hearing someone say like, oh, at the ripe young age of under 30, what's your definition of under 30? 29, 28, under 30? They didn't want to say 28 because people will run round that up to 30. I bet that's the case, right? They didn't want to say 28, 29, because people would just be like, oh, that's 30 years old. That's not that impressive. But because it's an advertisement, right? But when they say, oh, under 30, they're like, oh, under 30, maybe it's a 22-year-old. But that's of course impossible in this day and age, unless you stray away from the system and you go your own way, make your own money. See where I'm getting at? Yeah, but overall, this is just a really sad situation. Um, Unfortunate that the housing market is like this. Not even just in Singapore, in other places as well. Um, yeah, very bad.